Hi, and welcome to the Improvisors podcast. I'm Neil Thomas, and this is my co-host, Kevin James.
Great. Thank you, Neil. On the Improvisors podcast, we chat with performers about their histories, about their notions of practice, about their current interests, and their ongoing aspirations. Who have we got on today, Neil?
Today, it gives us great pleasure to be in conversation with extraordinary artist and extraordinary human, REN WALTERS. We talk with REN about the tyranny of the red button, his work with the Ensemble That, with David Tolley and Dur-é Dara, and the importance of freedom, permission, acceptance, and challenge that arose from their works together.
REN also spoke of freeing the animal, spoke of art as a process of emerging and becoming, and also spoke of the presence of absence in the absence of presence.
We hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did.
Great, let's go.
Good morning, REN WALTERS. It's fabulous to have you here. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with Kevin and I.
Absolutely my pleasure, Neil and Kevin. Thank you.
How would you like to start today?
Well, we have had a couple of conversations in the past, which were about getting to know each other and I guess mapping out kind of parameters for this official recording. Somehow it does somehow feel different, doesn't it, from when we're just speaking without the recording going on. I think that's a big thing, like the recording, the notion or the concept of recording as audience, as something sort of official. And that's the thing that I've kind of struggled with a lot of my life, I think. You know, recording music, this was a big thing in when I first started. Like to go into a recording studio was hugely expensive. I mean, you just didn't do it. And if you did, it was terrifying because you'd never been in a place like that before. And there was all this equipment which you knew nothing about. And officials wandering around who knew a lot about the stuff, and you knew that technology, things like microphones and all this stuff, all the gear, kind of held the power of how your work would be documented, recorded. So it was really unmusical scenario. And yes, I remember terrible experiences in recording studios early on, just so dissatisfying because of that, and not being able to overcome nerves and you know, just the weight of it was just outrageous, just ridiculous. So so here we are in this very weighty situation, and I'm getting nervous.
There's something about, I was thinking, the tyranny of getting it right.
That's a good word. I like that. The tyranny. Yes, it is tyrannical. It is.
Sorry, I'm sitting here, sort of lightly laughing, maybe at this shift that's happened. You know, our previous conversations have been very free flowing and long duration. It's been remarkable. And as soon as the record button was pressed today, and the emphasis shifts,
yes,
it's a shift. So great to accommodate that. I feel I want to be playful with it as well, if we can.
I'm wondering whether that's not a great opportunity to talk about the getting it right the pressing of the red button, the sealing of that SEALING, the sealing of that moment, that emerging, improvised, performed moment, sealing that into some sort of perpetuity, some sort of record, some sort of product, as opposed, is almost a case to be, well, I want your thoughts really, Ren, a case to be made for never allowing yourself to be recorded, that it's the antithesis of creative process.
Yes, I understand that, and because of the sense of interference, I think that this red button, this red light recording thing, and it's not that, of course, it's our mind. It's my mind that okay, now it's official. Bang, whatever you say is going to be recorded, and therefore can be pondered, can be pored over, can be repeated 100 times or more. Yeah, that's an interference, but it's also, there's also the possibility of a kind of positive tautness that can bring about, meaning that you you pull your force, you pull things together inside yourself. There's a brace, some kind of bracing. Which is, I would think of as a focus, as a concentration of energy. And but it reminds me of my private guitar practice, where I'm playing something. Maybe it's something that I've played before, I'm repeating it, and my mind starts to wander. And I realize after some time that I haven't actually been fully attentive of making the sound. I've been somehow on automatic. And I think I've actually spent a lot of time being like that, which means that I'm practicing being automatic. And, there's a lot, like athletes talk about that, like going on autopilot as a very positive thing, right? Because you train so that you don't have to think about these things. But this is a kind of ambiguous situation, because yes, you want to not have to think about the nuts and bolts as, now, how do I do that? And can I do that? And what's the best way to do that? Because that occupies so much time and energy, as opposed to just being able to do it. But to just be able to do it means you've had to have trained to get to that point. So what I'm saying is, with the guitar playing, feeling like I'm drifting away, and then it's there is so much positivity in coming back to just hearing the sound and being with the sound as closely as possible, without reflecting on what's just happened or what's about to come, that congeals, that brings together, brings me together.
Ren, can I,
in a, perf-
as you were
in a
saying,
performative presence.
yeah, well, the word presence, when you were saying that, I was sort of thinking, well, when you're in that moment, you were talking about to actually just drift off on automatic is sort of one way of naming something up, but being clear to sort of summon our presence, and summon might be too firm a word either, or invite presence, or just re-invite the fullness of what we are into the doing in that moment. That feels as though that is that process of not of summoning our presence, so we're, and it's so easy to use simplistic words like we're more fully present, or we're more this or more that, but it is a particular invitation to be present in a particular way, whilst whatever is happening is emerging, to actually play a part in its emergence, but to actually also step out of overplaying a part in its emergence. And there's somehow there's a twofold prospect there, a wonder. If you want to comment on that.
Yes. I have to think about that a little bit. A word that comes immediately to mind is lightness. So that there is this sense of, oh, I realize I'm drifting away, and what is that? That's me not being here. So bring myself, and the great thing about the body, the great thing about what we have, the senses, is that the way we're wired is that we can plug into, our senses are the thing, is the thing. My sense of hearing is the means by which I'm able to bring my attention to the sound, but there is a active will required to do that. But it can't be force. This is where pleasure, I think, comes in. I love sound. I love quality, exploring, feeling the quality of sounds, one sound with another sound. So that is the trigger to bring my attention back to listening or the making of sound. But as I said before, if force is involved, then it becomes a sort of a contraction, and the contraction can restrict blood flow, right? So, and as you're, I think, talking about, Kevin, this invitational quality to the energies of our context and relation. We've spoken about this before, those things being so crucial to garnering, to yeah.
Now that we've been talking about relationship and context and improvisation, maybe it's a great point to talk about your earlier formative experiences, and in particular with the ensemble that, and the partnership you had with David Tolley and Dur-é Dara.
Yes, very happy to discuss my relationship with those two particularly. David Tolley was, I met David Tolley in the early 1970s at art school. I had the choice of going to Melbourne Conservatorium of Music or Preston Institute of Technology Fine Art, which was quite a radical, in those days, institution, radical course in art. And I'd done a preliminary art because I was no good at school. So my father presented me with the possibility of going to art school in year 12 instead of doing year 12. And I said, well, I think I can cope with that. To go from a boys' school to this incredible preliminary art course was a revolution. I could talk a lot about that. That was really an amazing year of being introduced to all sorts of interesting students, but also very interesting tutors, some of whom had come from post-war Europe. Just really loving, capable craftspeople that I really felt at home amongst these people, or began to feel that through that process. And that was a great relief, because for the 5 years or so prior to that at school, I felt very not disconnected from, and in fact became mute. Really, I couldn't speak. I just which was quite different to how life was before I went to that boys' school. But then after the preliminary art, I ended up at Preston Institute of Technology, which was just extraordinary. And that's where I met David and a lot of other really wonderful tutors and students. And I lived in the outside of Melbourne in the country for many years, 3-4 years, with some other students, and which was also fabulous. And I didn't have much to do with. I didn't go into the school too much. So my relationship with these wonderful people was tenuous at times, but profound, especially on reflection. Anyway, I met up with David again, probably. So he taught a subject called sound, as well as he did life drawing and other things. And I met up with him. I called him before I went overseas in '94 to get together and have a chat about some things. And so we did. And then when I came back a year later, we started to work together. And I felt like I really came to know him then. And at that point, I was very much in a pickle. I wasn't in good shape, and I was not very content with my practice of my music practice, and sort of at the end of the road, really, with that. And David and I met Dur-é through David, because Dur-é was David's partner. We really embarked upon I did, process of reconstruction, sort of begin again. And in that sense, David and Dur-é were my mother and father. It was very much a rebirth and well, everything was questioned. Why would you do that? You know, why would you make that sound then and there? From me, not from them. From them, it was complete acceptance. You know, because when you're moving from one kind of condition of a sort of habitual, could even say fixed mindset to something very different, there are all these kind of perversions and irregularities, just eruptions and things that happen because it's like two weather systems clashing, and so it's a process, and it took quite some time, and for me to feel, although we worked very intensely together, you know, I was spending a lot of time with them, and so yeah, it was a process of reconstruction, and so I really owe much of who I am now, and you know, the things that have happened over the last 20 odd years, very much to David. I was very, very fortunate to have been so close to David, and I mean, he's someone who suffered a lot of pain himself. I think through sort of isolation because of his creative choices, because of his life choices. Yeah, there's a lot of things I could say, but about David, but you know, maybe you can ask me some questions or redirect me.
You spoke of reconstruction, and I suppose, you know, there was maybe deconstruction leading to reconstruction, and maybe the reconstruction has continued ever since. But I imagine that process of working together with David and Dur-é went on. That was a very extended period of time.
Yes.
I'm imagining many phases, and it kept becoming and becoming and becoming. I'd love to know a little bit more about that sort of longer term process of being together in the formation, the making, and the sharing of what you together generated.
David seemed magical to me, and so did Dur-é. And it was, I think it was to do with the way that they were connected to what they did. And I've thought about this a lot. So the way that David let's say moved from one sound to another always fascinated me. And I think this goes back a little bit to what I was saying before about my own guitar practice, where there's this sense of not letting go of, you know, so maybe I can talk about the world of more conventional music making, which is where I came from. And so, you know, on the bandstand, you're with a group and you're playing this composition. So this is more conventional music making, where there is a composition, which is a big part of the world that I came from. not the entire thing, but a big part. And so you play your part, and that means that there are times when you you stop and you let someone else take the limelight or that kind of thing. And in that moment, perhaps your mind wanders off to the bar, or you see a beautiful person walking past you, and you, which I use that illustration because that's happened to me. No, I'm not going to go. So what I'm saying is there's a break in attention. There's a break in presence. There's a break in immersion in the act, which can be a good thing because you can then re-enter with a fresh energy or whatever. But I found with David that because we did a lot of kind of things that moved away from sound as well, that became, you know, like there's a famous story about a drummer, a jazz drummer. Was he performing with? Yeah, we were performing with each other at a festival, and he looked over and saw me crawling around on the stage with a tin can on my head. So we moved into a kind of, I wasn't thinking about it as theatrical, but we weren't really talking about it that way, but it was, you know, it came out of the sound making, it came out of the music making, of pushing boundaries, you know. But what always struck me with David was that you could go from something like playing the most delicate, orally sophisticated sound weaving to something, you know, stomping around on the floor, shouting and screaming or whatever. But it never felt like there was a kind of conscious thought about that. It was always the way that he would move from that one thing to another thing seemed to be so easy and so connected all the time. Like there never seemed to be a break. And that was really, really impressive, and something that that I aspired to. You know, we had conversations about that, and he told me that that was something that he discovered through a tutor of his at East Sydney Tech in the, I don't know, 60s or something, to do with life drawing and to do with never leaving the pencil kind of thing. And so it was something he was very aware of. And Dur-é had her own version and has her own version, because David's no longer with us. He died in 2014. And so I think that's the nub of something there, because, you know, I'd go over to their place and we'd, as soon as we kind of saw each other, it was on. There was this sense that we'd started, you know, like, so there wasn't this, so you could have a 3-hour meal or conversation or something before playing any music together, or maybe you never got around to it because other things felt totally right and there was no need. Although, you know, we always had so much pleasure in playing sounds together. But the point of that is that a sense of what's the word? Glue is not the right word, because but it's like,
Makes me think of a magical ensemble. Sounds like the magical ensemble everyone wants to be in.
well, perhaps because it never seemed not there. I can say it that way. The kind of it's like honey was between us. We were in a vat of honey or something. Very often you feel the definition between one thing and another thing was spongy. That sponginess, I think, yeah.
Oh, Ren, I was just musing also on that sort of rich relational thickness, I suppose, that you're talking about, and which is always on. We're immersed in it, and hence the emergence of if I think that's a reasonable way, the emergence of that relational thick syrupy honey connection is the life that's sort of being the rich life that's emerging, and that becomes so I guess particular in that case, and you seems like you together thrived in that and still do.
When that comes to an end through death, what does that mean, and what do we do with that? So loss, absence. I was thinking about that the other day, about the absence, but absence is not. And then I came up with this thing about the presence of absence, or the is it the absence of presence? I don't know, but residue. The two most profound figures in my life, David and my father, who's an artist as well. They're with me every day, and I realize that that I carry on their work.
It struck when you were talking about David and the ensemble. It struck me that in those initial moments, there was something about freedom and acceptance that somehow they laid on you a complete acceptance, and you moved into this space of free play.
Very much.
And I was thinking about your work now, which is called free play. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what is that about?
What is that about? Or
yeah. What is free play about? Yeah.
Yes, but you also maybe want to put in the word, so you said freedom and acceptance, but you also might want to put in the word challenge as well. We took great joy in subverting and challenging ourselves and each other as well. But that's also a product of confidence in the relationship, and confidence in, or trust in, the work and each other. But yes, the permissiveness and the embrace, really, you know, this like it's a sort of, it's a holding, and that you know, there are transgressions, there are things that, you know, and you but so, you know, there's one occasion where I actually turned David's amplifier off in a performance, which did really push the boundary. But he also understood why I did that. There was another occasion of nakedness on stage in a girls' school. But, you know, it had a context. And it was a polarizing moment, because there were some other people connected to the group there that took a dim view. But this is what, you know, this is life. This is you know, like nowadays it's all about risk management, mitigating risk. I mean, it's just suffocating. I mean, imagine if I had have done what I said I did in the girls' school 20 years ago, whatever it was. Now, I mean, that'd be it. I'd be hauled off to something, somewhere. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because it's the permission to make things, to do things that maybe in the cold hard light of day you would not choose to do, but in the heat of the moment, where the conscious judgmental mind has been put aside, and let's say the animal is being freed, anything's possible. And the limit is, of course, I don't want to inflict pain or suffering on another human being or creature. And, you know, that's the intent, but
When
this
you
can happen.
when you're speaking about this, I go to that place, the bigger picture of, of, let's call it art practice in this world. Even take the word away, practice, but the making of art in this world is like, it feels like it, what you mentioned about being able to inhabit places in ourselves, inhabit the worlds that we're generating in ways that are less than usual, socially controlled, non-risk taking, increasingly so in the world ventures. But to have this place, this world that we're generating, that we can become what we might within it, maybe within the confines of that particular form of art making, but it I suppose liberates us to follow impulses, to follow urges, to actually generate forms that are quite contrary to what is enabled and acknowledged in the world. But what a remarkable, what a remarkable ongoing opportunities to continue to generate and inhabit and explore the things that come up.
Mm. Mm. Yes, and I think it's endangered. that approach is endangered from my perspective. And this goes back to a comment that Neil made at the end of one of our conversations about relevance. Now, I think I kind of talked myself into a bit of a corner at that point about being an old white man and carrying kind of trajectories from the past that maybe are no longer relevant or something. And Neil perhaps felt something similar, and you know, was asking the question, are we relevant? Like, where is our relevance? Because I don't perform in the way that I used to before the pandemic lockdown. That was a big shift. That was a big break and a big change. And since being let out, it feels to me that I still am in the lockdown somehow. And part of that is, yes, it's my internal world and landscape, but it's also my perceptions of the external world, what goes on out there, the kind of tonality, people's attitudes, which is hard to really qualify, but towards, let's say, performance or art making that is improvisational. We must mention that word, Kevin. Which is a product of, or a process of self and context and environment and relations. And yeah, so precipice is a word that comes to mind for me. And I feel like I have been and am hovering around the edge of the abyss, both physically and creatively. And there's so much that I don't know and don't understand. But I keep working at it.
Ren, it's getting close to what will need to be time soon.
Yes.
I feel deeply engaged with and moved by your reflections and by the conversations you, I, and Neil have had over a period of time. They're delicate, they're delightful, they're probing, they're nuanced, it really is very, and they're precious. I'm not sure if I use that word, but they feel very precious to be involved with. So thank you for continuing with our conversation today and bringing it to the eyes and ears and maybe feelings of those that'll be watching. It feels a little bit hard to draw a line and say this is the end of a conversation today, because it's got such ongoing life.
It's so processual, isn't it?
Yes, it is so processual. And well, in brief summary, I think we've spoken a lot about emergence within relational contexts, and that being a simplistic way of defining something about improvisation. And we haven't used the word improvisation, you, I, and Neil, very much in our conversations, because we've, as we said, we all slump a little bit at that word at times because of has many connotations. It's liked by some people. It's sort of pushed away by others, and it's loaded with you know, forms of interpretation. But if we continue to talk about that which emerges within context relationally, where attention is given to the details, and when it's very invitational and allowing and enabling, then it's we don't use the word improvisation. I almost forgot what the word was. Then it's
Yeah.
and it really is a process, and it's a process you name up so beautifully.
Well, it does. One aspect of improvisation is in conversation with people is that there's no preparation, that it's just, oh yeah, you make it up as you go, or it's all about being free and so on. But, you know, we know that life is the preparation for that, right? And but it's in the moments, I think, that those moments of coalescing where you come together as a performer through your love of the medium, your love of the sensuality. I think it's a sensual, for me, it's a sensual engagement, and that everything else then flows from. And that's where the sense of connection occurs. And the unique nature of the discovery in the moment is always so compelling, don't you think? This sense of newness, that, oh, like something you've never seen before, or something you've never touched before, or something you've never smelt before. And yet, perhaps in its deeply unique, no, we don't need to use the word deeply, in its unique nature, you connect with this kind of essential ingredient that's really about the wonder and questioning and of life itself. Like this amazing opportunity. Here it is in front of you.
Wow, what a great place to finish. I just want to let that.
Endings are important, Neil.
Yeah, I just want to let that just sing out.
I really think beginnings and endings are crucial. If you get those right, then it doesn't matter what goes on in the middle.
It's true. Finish with a bang, leave them wanting more.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Ren. We are going to bring it to a close there. I just want to say something like you're an amazing being. Thank you for sharing yourself, and it's been such a pleasure to meet you in this way.
It's a pleasure to meet you and Kevin as well. And I feel like the conversation will continue at different points.
Yeah.
And thanks for what you're doing, bringing all these kind of disparate views of what improvisational work is. And I think it's a great project, and will be of value to a lot of people, not just artists, I think.
Great.
So thank you very much, two of you.
Thanks, Ren.